Major phone carriers make you sign contracts with rigid data plans to trap you into a kind of forced phonogamy. Sounds pretty insecure if you ask me. At Consumer Cellular, we believe in a more consensual and healthy form of phonogamy, free of contracts and more flexible to your data needs. This way, you stick around not because we force you to with contracts and fees, but because you love our phone plans. Like ardently love our phone plans. Phonogamously. Consumer Cellular. When freedom calls, we're here to answer. Call us at 1-888-FREEDOM.
Wendy's Coffee House. Hello, I'm Wendy. I'm talking with Kac Young, and we've talked before. Those interviews are in the archives, one of them on fairies. I also have a blog post on that. I'll link that. She also managed to heal her heart with Qigong. She's a 3-doctorate prolific author, studied world religions extensively, has worked in television for over 30 years, has multiple books to choose from. You can check out her website, kacyoung.com.
When we stop down and stop being our ego-driven selves and we acknowledge all of the magic in the world and all of the beings that are around us, and we just kind of relax into that, that's when our lives change into these amazingly guided, fun, spiritual journeys where it's easy and wonderful to sit in the garden and just be and watch what happens.
We're talking the book, and this is Magical Trees. I love it. Baobab Banana Bread. I went to the recipes. So, hey, welcome back.
Thank you, Wendy. I love that you went to the recipes. That's so funny.
Well,
good for you.
I like food, okay? And I love the fact that you included it.
Well, thank you very much. I thought it would be good fun because trees are so important to us on so many levels. And I just want people to be introduced to how important they are, because to our ancient civilization and our ancestors, they were more important than they are to a lot of us today. And I wanted to just help bring that to the forefront because they need our help right now.
There's one tree in here that's special. My neighbor across the street, I moved into a house of a woman who was deceased, and she was very good friends with the neighbor, and the neighbor was atheist, and she said, I would like to ask permission to honor the previous resident, to honor Diane, and would you allow us to plant a linden tree? Because it would grow well in Kansas, and it's a special tree. It flowers. That's one of my favorites. It's a beautiful tree, and it was the last thing I expected from my neighbor to say, could we plant a tree in your yard? But it's a gorgeous tree, and its longevity here is ensured because it's in Kansas and protected and native. A little tidbit behind the scenes. Thank you.
Well, I love that. And when you start to talk to people about trees, you'll find out that they talk about, oh, you know, in my childhood, I had this tree that I would go to whenever I felt sad or wherever I didn't feel understood. I would go and sit under my tree, or sometimes I would sit in my tree, and it really brought me a great deal of healing. And they do. They have that wonderful ability to be rooted in the ground. And if you look at us compared to a tree, you'll see that we have feet and the tree has roots, and then they have their trunk and we have our torso, and then they have blossoms and flowers and needles and berries, and that's like the blossoming in our brain. So we kind of resemble a tree when you look at the anatomy of each of us.
In everything that you do, you include a spiritual element, a spiritual quality. Sometimes it's not so overt. With this, again, the book is Magical Trees, a guidebook for finding the magic in everyday trees using crystals, spells, essential oils, and rituals. In this, Harry Potter had a wand, and now in this book, you also include how to make your own wand. I
do, because when people use wands, the energy that they have in their own body, in their own chakra system, in their own electromagnetic field, goes down through their arm into the wand. So it really isn't the wand itself. It is us in connection to the wand. And sometimes when we choose a particular type of a tree, let's say you want to choose your Celtic birth tree, that tree to which says you have these personality traits and you have these qualities. And when you do that, then you're adding even another dimension of silent power to the use of a wand. And when we do have the wand, I mean, certainly Walt Disney created the wand with, twinkle dust coming out the end of it, but there is still energy coming out of the wand from us and then commingled with the energy that's inherent in the tree. So it's a lovely thing to use and practice. And a lot of people who do rituals and do ritual magic use wands for that very reason.
Right now it's mulberry season. And I don't know if you've had mulberry pie, but my mom is going to be thrilled because I'm going to show her this recipe. Because right now in her backyard, mulberries are going nuts, all right? And we go to the park. I've got one in the yard here that isn't blooming yet. We think it's going to be a white mulberry because one fell down and it was white. We couldn't see until it fell down because they were all up at the top. So I'm crossing my fingers, but it's seasonal. And so you have to get them quick. That's why you don't find it in the grocery store. Have you tried it?
Yes, indeed I have. I grew up in the Northwest, and so we had a lot of blackberries and mulberries and loganberries and all of those things. If you remember Tom Robbins' books, he writes a lot about blackberry vines. And so, yes, I had a lot of berry type things, and it was just wonderful growing up to have those kinds of nourishments, from the branches, from the ground. It was lovely.
You're in an area where they have lots of trees. California, what's your favorite tree there?
Well, I love the magnolia. Oh. It stands for so much for me spiritually, and I got to know it spiritually and magically when I walk my dog down by the courthouse in Ventura, and we go there every day, and I have gotten to know these magnolia trees quite interestingly, and I know when they drop their pods, when I can harvest seeds, and I'm currently growing about 6 magnolias right now from the seeds, and when they flower and blossom and bloom, there's nothing like the scent that they give off. They're just extraordinary, and sometimes when the blossoms fall, I bring them home and put them in a bowl of water, and the whole house just smells like a magnolia orchard. So they are quite transformative, at least they have been for me. They're very receptive, and they're very elegant. They're beautiful to look at, and they have, and if you invite them to come into your heart and soul, they will, and they have a gentle, strong, enduring sense to them that is really healing.
Runes. You include this in the book. That's a novelty. That's a different element that we don't see a lot about.
Yes. Well, the runes and the OWAM, also divination tools. And the runes were originally made out of branches of a tree. So before they were hewn into stone, they were wood. And if you will notice, tree branches seldom are straight like sticks. They are curved. And so the runes themselves had a much more feminine quality to them originally. And they were placed on the ground, and they were placed as divination tools, and they used them as symbolic ways of communicating. They were secret in some places initially. And then they got, when they used stone, everything became sort of straight and hewn in, so they looked very, militaristic or computeresque. But they are, in fact, wavy and gentle and feminine. And it was the goddess Freya who gave Odin the information when he hung upside down on a yew tree, and he became synonymous then with the yew tree. So all of this lore goes back into history and brings forth this very rich metaphysical truth about how the runes came about. And we look at them as just kind of sort of plain representative symbols, but they are much deeper than that and much more complex. So it's beautiful to realize they came from trees originally.
If you're trying to do your own divination and you're building your rune vocabulary, is there a certain tree that you recommend?
Well, I like to work with wood from a birth tree. So my birth month is August, and so it's hazel for me. And I love to work with hazel. And then my opposite sign is Pisces. So I will work with the woods, the balancing woods of each Celtic birth month, and that seems to really work nicely for me whenever I'm doing any kind of a process or a magical experiment.
I want to go back and just say that you also do hypnotherapy and you have background in natural health, PhD, and a doctorate in naturopathy. So this is not something you're just spouting off. It's something you've worked hard to earn and learn about in all the different areas that you write and talk about. I just want to throw that in there because, there's so much that that if I ask you a question or refer to something, you immediately have 10 pages or an encyclopedia to refer to in your mind. And I'm like, wow. And so I appreciate the knowledge, the depth of knowledge that you have. And I just can't ask you enough questions about this to bring forth all the stuff that I would love to know about. Again, trees, you're also in an area where there's issues with fires, but that's, I think, been part of the problem from what I remember. The Native Americans who were there had been burning and had that area beautiful, Oregon, California. They did that naturally. And then when we did Smokey the Bear, we came in and said, no, you can't do that anymore. And all of a sudden, when we started micromanaging, then things changed. How is that happening now with the managing of the forest?
Well, everybody wishes it were better, but I think we have to go back, a couple hundred years, and we look at how we civilized these beautiful, magnificent areas, and we just encroached. We came in as humans, we said, oh, there's a pretty view. I'm going to put my house there without any respect to what nature needed to stay alive. And so I think we have to go back and look at our own selves. Now, I don't know many people that would say, okay, I'll move, I'll give up my home, and we'll just return this to the forest. But we are supposed to have dominion over the earth. That doesn't mean we're in charge of it and we can do what we want. It means that we have guidance for it. We have protection of it. We are assigned to take care of it. So we've misunderstood that term all along. And, so we've plunged in, plundered it, and done what we wanted. What we need to do, and I don't know if this will ever happen, but we need to allow the land to take back itself, and it does purge itself with fires. And then out of that fire grow new seedlings and new trees in a clearer, cleaner way. They get rid of their own funguses and their own problems. They get rid of it, and we've done the same thing by chopping down the forest and moving in. We have brought ourselves closer to the pathogens that animals have, whereby the forest used to absorb some of those viruses and some of those problems. Now they're coming across into the human world, and we've just invited in all kinds of challenges for our own health for the rest of our lives until we stop and we grow those forests where the animals can habitate and take care of some of the problems that we've brought into ourselves. There's a great documentary on PBS about this very thing, about the viruses that we have created and caused. And, we have also used the forests to get our own medicines. And there are over 250 medicines that we currently use that we have gotten from forests, from plants, from trees. And we just go ahead and continue to use those, and now we're duplicating them synthetically, whereas the natural properties are what we could be using and have a healthier world. But we apparently think we know better than nature, so we continue to err in that way. And I just crave for a more natural, seasonal clearance, renewal, and sense that would happen. We'd all be happier if that were the case and if that were to happen.
In your book, you mentioned a nonprofit actually started by John Denver, who was a tremendous eco-conscious person. I loved his mentality, the vibrancy, the joy he had for nature and for Colorado. Actually met a few people who crossed paths as they were out on his property, not intentionally, just, out and about. But he started a program, and this is the Planet 2020. And Michael, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but you said you learned a lot from him in terms of what to look for in tree planting.
Michael Tao, Thau. Yes. And I was a big proponent of buying trees as memorials for people for, the past 3 decades. But I realized that maybe I was supporting some groups that took your money and then maybe just scattered a couple of seeds here and there and never planted them correctly and never went back to water them. So it's a waste of money. They're the ones profiting. Whereas there are many, many, many organizations that I have listed in the book that are the ones to support and help, because they have teams that go plant the trees and then they come back and they water them and they nurture them and they make sure that they are growing correctly so they can grow up to be good trees that help us. 30% of our oxygen comes from trees, 70% comes from plankton and the sea. But we depend on the trees for the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. And that's what we talk about so often, about our carbon footprint and the reality that we are facing about how we continue to pollute and we don't clean up. So if people are carbon responsible a little bit more, we'll be able to balance that. But as we cut down trees and use them for building our houses and just furniture and all the rest of our things, and we don't consciously replant them or make sure that it is sustainable, we are shooting ourselves in our own foot, because we're going to then end up with a less dense air, and there's no going to be exchange and return of carbon dioxide and oxygen. And then what are we going to do? Wear gas masks and have fake oxygen? What kind of health will we have in those times? And we have no one to blame but ourselves.
You include in the book the Celtic, and this is some of the stuff, going back to the runes and stuff like that. You don't see this in every book, okay? So here are the magical trees. You go back to the Celts, and you include in this Celtic tree signs. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Are you speaking about the Ogham, or the fact that they did their rites and their own magic and their own cosmos worship in groves of oak trees?
Basically, the Celtic tree signs, which is chapter 4.
Okay, so the Celts lived by way of a calendar that followed the seasons, and they had various different feasts that they celebrated, and it celebrated what was happening in nature. So they were very close to that, and their society was based on the fact, now this isn't exactly open-minded, but it was based on the fact that whatever tree sign you were born under, you were going to be destined then to follow the pattern of your life. So it wasn't just as if your father was a carpenter that you would grow up to be a carpenter, but it was also the positive and the not so positive attributes of your Celtic birth tree sign. So we can look at what they are, what chakra they affect energetically, how they work within our psyche, and how they propel us forward. Now, of course, it's not an entire blueprint of how you must be, but it's a guideline. And I have included information that says what your compatible signs are with what trees, what the essential oils are that work vibrationally with that tree sign, what the chakras are, what a crystal might be, and then what your animal sign is. And I think when we look at ourselves as a whole, as a holistic whole, holistic with nature included, then we walk taller and prouder and fuller. And I would love us all to follow a lot with that Celtic calendar. It's not just the birthdays and the seasons that we have set up simply to sell jewelry. It has to do with our souls and our hearts and our ancient DNA, whether or not we come from the Celtic groupings or whether we come from Asia. It doesn't matter. It still is true that we all have a Celtic birth sign. Do you want to look at your birth month, and we'll talk about those for a minute and see if that works for you? All right, so what's your tree? Have you looked it up?
No, I have not. So we're just going to go fly blind here. I'm March.
You are March. Okay, let's look up to, let me get my book here. Are you early March or late March?
Early.
Okay, so you are, if you're born February 18th through March 17th, your tree is an ash. It's known as the enchanter, and you are related to the olive and the lilac family. Your personality is imaginative, intuitive, naturally artistic. You have constant inner motion. You love art, science, writing, poetry, and spirituality. You are seen sometimes as a reclusive, but you are just as immersed in your own world. Constantly self-renewing, you are unaffected by what others think about you. Your compatible sign, is that true?
Convenient. Yeah, very convenient.
Okay, great. All right.
Yeah.
So now your compatible signs are willow and reed. Your essential oil is lilac. And your chakra is the 7th, which is associated with clarity, vision, and intention. Your crystal is chrysoprase, balancing the yin and yang energy at the level of the mind and heart. And the animal sign is the snake, which means you have a deep understanding of mystical wisdom and the power to heal.
Oh, yeah, yeah. If you're following along, that's page 75.
All right. And so that resonates with you, huh?
Yes. Yeah, it really does. The willow is what I've been associated with in some ways. So I had a Native American who said, okay, your name, if you were going to be named, it would be Willow. And I thought, I'm doing good enough with Wendy, okay?
Well, that's okay, but that means it's compatible, and what she is seeing in you is that compatible sign.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's just beautiful. That's wonderful. Now, if you were to get a wand, of course, I would suggest you get an ash wood, and you make a wand out of that, and use those essential oils, and that enhances how you were born and what your natural gifts are.
Kac Young, website, kacyoung.com. Wendy's Coffee House. KacYoung.com, the website. Words of wisdom, the way to control your future is to create it. I want to go into fairies, okay, because each tree also has that other elemental quality. Now, I do see fairies around my trees. And not only that, there's been Sasquatch energy around the trees. And the crystal helps that. I'll tell you, I planted, when I went to a place where they had Sasquatch, and the Sasquatch themselves had placed crystals at the bottom of the tree. I came home and from that area, brought a crystal, put it at the bottom of the tree. It cleared out everything around the bottom of the tree except for my elderberries. I was blown away. No weeding. It just did it. I'm like, wow, energy.
Yeah, anything that isn't essential has to disappear in the place of and the compatible crystals with the trees are amazing too. I was on your show before and we talked about, I was in the Thomas Fire of 2017 where every house in my neighborhood, and I mean every house in my neighborhood, burned to the ground except my house. And half of the backyard burned, and it stopped right at the fairy garden where I had a fairy door and I had the fairy crystals and the fairy furniture. So you can attribute that to, sharp firefighters, or you can say, oh my God, there's something to it. I had large crystals all throughout my house, and I had the fairy garden specifically for the fairies in the back. And I think that they absolutely protected the house in some extraordinary way. And so we didn't lose our house.
I think they work with us. And when we engage and make an attempt to work with, not control, not barter, not just attempt to say, how can I help? How may I connect? And listen and pay attention. We get insight, information, whether it's dreams, whether it's automatic writing, whether it's telepathic. It's here around us. And trees are one big conduit, a connector to that fairy realm as well.
Well, that's right. And when the fairies, when the shining ones were banished to the underground after they lost the war to the Malaysians in the early BC days, they decided that they would live underground, but that they would still connect with humans. That was their designation. That is their assignment. So if they were called angels, and some of people do call them angels, that is their assignment, that they would be the the messengers between us and the celestial realm. And that's what they do. And when we want to invite them in, we take a very, very serious approach to that. We learn their language, we learn their sensibilities, we learn what's proper and what's not proper, what they like and what they don't like. And when we generously and graciously invite them into our lives and into our world, they blossom like popcorn on the stove, and they will help you, they will guide you, they will bring you magic and miracles, and they are extraordinary partners that we should not be afraid of. I know you know in Ireland that there are certain trees that are designated, the hawthorn, as designated as a fairy tree, and they will build roads around the fairy tree rather than chop it down. And there is a farmer, an amazing farmer in Ireland, which I mentioned in the tree, who has fairies all over his farm. And here's this big, sturdy, ruddy guy who will talk to you about fairies, as the day is long, if you want to, because he is absolutely believes in them, and he interacts with them all the time. And it's just gorgeous to see and hear, because when we stop down and stop being our ego-driven selves and we acknowledge all of the magic in the world and all of the beings that are around us, and we just kind of relax into that, that's when our lives change into these amazingly guided, fun, spiritual journeys where it's easy and wonderful to sit in the garden and just be and watch what happens.
One term that sometimes gets a bad rap is spell. Okay, so it's like, oh, no, that's a bad name. That's a bad word. Could you please change that? I mean, not change the word, but change the emotion with the negativity, because this isn't something that's harmful. This is something that is I think a better use of energy in making it a positive experience with a spell, okay?
Well, a spell is just what we believe and what we practice. So if you're a member of a political party, you are under the spell of that political party. If you are a member of a particular religion, you are under the spell of those beliefs. There's nothing negative about a spell. It's just how you use it. Now, I have to say that there are people out in the world that use black magic techniques and use certain incantations and spells to bring about, evil. And that's what they do. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the kind of a spell that we are under. We're under the American spell to be Americans, because freedom is our most important thing, and that is a spell. So if we look at just what a spell is, and we look it up in the dictionary, and we research the word itself, it is absolutely a neutral thing. We empower that with our belief system. So when you want to use a spell, a spell is really just a prayer. And so if you use a spell, as I recommend in Magical Trees, it is all about positivity, energy, about bringing in love, bringing in the cosmos, bringing in things that are beyond us, whatever you want to call it. Name it anything you want, Yahweh, God, or just the universe, the Milky Way, whatever you want to. It's something outside of ourselves that is bigger than us. And then when we use a spell, which is really just a ritual and a prayer, then we innervate that. We bring it to life. We bring more life and energy to us. And we can do that by using our wand. We can use our hands. We can use any tool that opens our mind and opens our heart, whatever that is for you, and everybody has a different choice. So I believe in 100% freedom, and that there is no such thing as a bad spell unless you are evilly intended, and then you just use a belief system to do evil things.
Okay, and remember, when you do evil things, like attracts like, okay? So if that's what you insist on doing, I'm sorry, but that's what you bring back to you. So that, for me, is be all end all proof. Do the right thing.
Yeah. Karma, baby, karma. It will come back. So, yeah, when I kind of came to the recognition that a spell was a prayer, it opened up my whole life. And I say, well, it's beliefs and it's action and it's ritual, and it's different for everybody. But everybody likes a blessing, don't we? In every belief system, we all like blessings. And so bless our trees, bless all the things around in nature, bless the fairies, and you will find that your life just lights up and takes off in a whole wonderful new direction.
Okay, now you talk about how to approach a tree and being very careful and not insulting the tree right off the bat. Okay, so could you approach a tree for us so we can learn?
Yes, indeed. It's a lesson in life, isn't it? Whether we're approaching a person or a tree, or the ocean or a mountain, you want to locate the tree that you want to work with. and you want to, pick out one that you want to get to know, and then establish a rapport with it, just like you would over tea with a person. You want to get to know them. So you want to attune yourself and open yourself to approach them, and be curious about the tree, just as you would if you were meeting a person. You want to find out what it's about. Notice the little things about the trees. Who lives on it? Who lives in it? What are the creatures around it? And then close your eyes and connect with the tree. Just go ahead and take a leaf or a branch in your hands and concentrate on that. See if you can feel the energy of the tree. And now you probably will really connect with it and just relax into it and feel like, oh yes, I've met a new friend. And if you want to take a branch, you have to ask permission. You have to say, may I have this leaf? May I have this cone? May I have this? And if so, then bring with you a reciprocal gift. The Native Americans used to use tobacco to show their gratitude, but you can do anything else you want, but you must leave something in place for what you have taken. And then if you have extra time, stay with the tree for a while. Maybe you can bring a book or listen to some music or share the music with the tree. Trees have a loving and lovely way of giving you answers to things. What they can do, their magic is absorbing human emotion, transforming it and returning it. And if that image is hard for someone to understand, just understand that they take our carbon dioxide, transform it into sugar, and the off-putting or the output of that transformation into sugar, which then feeds and nurtures them, is our oxygen. So that whole chemical process gives them life and returns life back to us. So too, they can do that metaphysically and emotionally with us. So it's not a bad thing to go take your grief or your sadness or your hurts to a tree, sit with them, give it to them, let them transform it, and they will give back to you something that is pure and transformed in a loving manner. It's really true. And then definitely take a picture of your tree so that you can have its magic with you. I know a lot of people who have pictures of their favorite trees from childhood and even, current times where they have it on their desk and they just look at their tree and all of a sudden, boom, they're changed, So from whatever person they want to yell at on the phone or whatever email they're typing, they look at their tree and all of a sudden, okay, there's my relief, there's my release, and now I feel loved again. It's just magical what trees can do for us.
And you make it sound so simple and so elegant. It's just that thing of we take them for granted. You will go for a walk and it isn't the tree that always comes to mind first thing. It's like I'm going for a walk, the grass is there, the sun, the moon, the stars, whatever. But the trees, we depend on them. And I have a lot of good memories about trees, and one specific tree now that is basically, I won't say soulmate, but for me, there is a certain element of that tree that I'm responsible for on that level. And I didn't expect it. I didn't understand it at first. And all of a sudden, I had this magnet, is drawing me, and thought, wow, here it is, trying to teach me a lesson.
There was a city in Adelaide, Australia, that the government said, okay, we're going to protect our trees and we're going to ask all the residents here who was ever interested to write letters to trees and we will read them to the trees. And people wrote in hundreds of thousands of letters, a little odes to this trees and thank you tree. And all these trees got to be thanked and appreciated by the entire city. And it's just magical. You can read some of the trees online if you just Google that. Thank you letters to trees. What a great civic idea. Oh. And then we really get to appreciate them and say, trees are people too, as far as I'm concerned. And I respect them. And I have trees all over my yard. We had to replant after the fire. And I have this abundant orchard. And it's because I do spend time with them. I water them once a week. I talk to them. And I was just squeezing fresh orange juice this morning out of one of my trees, and I have another one laden with avocados. I mean, they give. All you have to do is show trees a little appreciation, and they manifest back to you so quickly and so beautifully. It's like, we talk about limbs being burdened by the fruit. Well, yeah, that's what they do, because the nature of a tree is to give and to be generous. And when we absorb that energy and we embrace it and we become grateful for it and we thank them, oh my God, the power of the reciprocation is just stunning and overwhelming, and it is uplifting.
Of all the books you've written, this is the one I have heard you the most enthusiastic, even the Cheese Dome. This is, there's really a whole lot of heart in this one, and that's where you live anyway. But I just think it's amazing that this one just absolutely brings you to life, and so I'm glad, because this is a huge service. I think we all are ready to hear that we have to start giving back to nature, because we have taken so much, and it's time to learn how to be a proper caretaker guardian for this planet, because we'd like to keep it around for a while so it will keep us around. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I have to thank you for that compliment, but I also have to say it's also because of your graciousness and welcoming and support in the way you handle your guests that really brings out the ability to be free and to speak the passion. I think I want to be part of the brigade that helps save the planet and not destroy it. And I'm doing everything I can to make people aware. So I'm hopefully constructing a positive experience with trees, something that will excite people and get them ready to go out and say, well, wait a second, let me consider trees in my life now. Let me look at them, appreciate them, love them, and then we can all grow together and keep this beautiful planet alive.
Well, I love the things that you're doing, because it brings the imagination to the forefront and helps us be creative in the way that we look at our world. The website, kacyoung.com, and it's Kac Young, YOUNG.com. And the books all there, from crystals to elementals to the Cheese Dome. I mentioned that. I love that. It's just fun. The Bach Flower Remedies, Dogs, Cats, The Enlightened Person's Guide to Raising a Dog. And by the way, your cat, okay, we have to mention, how's your cat doing? Because if they go on the web and see your cat, just a little bit of a background, because that is the love of your life at the moment, that's just absolutely causing you to be way, 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 way creative.
Yes, Spirit the cat was absolutely a wonderful thing that came into my life. And I have just discovered this week that I am actually related by marriage to the person who rescued him in the Wilshire district. And he ended up going with her sister to Kitty Bungalow, downtown Los Angeles in South Central, and then coming to me in Ventura by way of a friend in New York. So it is the most connective, beautiful thing. And Spirit the Cat has written his own autobiography called My First Autobiography by Spirit the Cat. I simply typed it. He wrote it, and all the proceeds benefit Kitty Bungalow to rescue feral kittens and rehome them, socialize them, and rehome them in their forever homes. So it's an extraordinary charity. I love them, and Spirit is the love of my life and my inspiration.
Spirit knew exactly who to tap for all of that. Okay, I've got my PR woman in mind, and she's going to like me. She's going to love me. She's going to be at my beck and call. And you are, which is brilliant. Brilliant. He's a smart cat.
He is. He's very smart.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your time. And I'll put some links. I'm going to look up the link to that, the trees, the letters. I think that's brilliant. And I think we should all do that more often. Whether we have a platform for it, just to do that personally would make a big difference for each of us individually. So thank you for the inspiration.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for the honor of time with you on the air. I appreciate it, and I just want everybody to understand and value trees, because once you get involved with trees and you understand how magical they are, your life will change for the better.
Magical Trees, a guidebook for finding the magic in everyday trees using crystals, spells, essential oils, and rituals. It's a gold mine, a gem, and there's no other tree book written like this. Kac Young, thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
Website, kacyoung.com. I'll include the links in the description for the show and the link to my blog, talking to Nightlights. Thanks for listening.